So today we're going to be discussing, how to take interviews, and basically, it's all about enhancing your interview taking skills. I'm going to be discussing a number of things related to that. Pretty much all the topics that I always have been, thinking of telling various candidates about taking the interviews properly. One of the most important things when you are taking the interview. So this is related to either vendor interviews. So if you remember, this diagram shows that there are end clients, there are tier one vendors, there are consultants. Typically, the interviews are taken by either system integrators, US system integrators, DC system integrators, or the end client, or even tier one vendors do some technical screening. All these rules apply to all these different kinds of interviews. Okay, so if you don't know what this diagram is all about, there is a video about the end client vendors and consulting company, how these are all related, and you need to look at that video. And now let's come back to the interview taking skills. The very first communication skill that you have to take care of when you are talking to any hiring manager over the phone, or even or even for a face-to-face interview, is like you need to speak aloud. See, what happens is many of us don't speak aloud when we are talking. For example, right now, as you can see, my my speech is full of energy. So basically, it's all about full of energy. You have to have full of your speech has to be full of energy. You cannot be speaking like a dull person. I have worked in Java, and you cannot be speaking like this. You have to speak aloud. I have worked in Java. I have also worked in Swing and Hibernate, and I've got very good experience working in servlets. So you see how I'm talking and how some other person could be talking. I have worked in Java, and I have worked in servlets, and I have also worked in Swing and Hibernate. This thing, when you speak aloud, so this thing is not right. And why it's not right is because I have some theory about why. I mean, it doesn't matter why, actually. It really doesn't matter. Just speak aloud. But why? In general, in America, speaking aloud means confidence. And many people tend to speak dull and slowly and in a low voice, because in India it is considered humble to speak like that. But in America, that is not considered humble. When you speak in a dull, low voice, it's considered humble in India. When you speak, and that's considered disconfident in America. So that's the issue. So they do not like it when you speak in a dull voice, in a low voice. So you need to speak aloud. Second one is speak aloud, as well as you should make sure it comes out of your mouth. So this is the second important thing. Words should come out of your mouth. As you can see, they should not be in your mouth. They should be coming out of your mouth. And typically you would do that if you are full of energy, and you need to make sure they come out of your mouth. Third one is speak slowly, speed wise. Many people, when they're speaking such a very fast pace. So in America, you never speak like that. You speak slowly, speed wise. I am a little bit fast. Even sometimes, hiring managers tell me, hey, you know what, you speak too fast. And that's right. And I admit to this problem of mine. But at the end of the day, you should be knowing that that's a wrong thing to do. And we should not be, we should not be speaking fast or quickly. We should be speaking slowly. Like for example, right now, I'm speaking aloud as well as slowly. So this is how you talk when you are taking the interview. I have got very good experience working in Java. I have got very good experience working in servlets and Swing. Like you see how, and the words should be separate from each other. The words should be separate from each other. You see how, so it's very easy to understand. Now, one of the reasons is, we Indians have an accent, whether we believe we don't, but we do, all of us do. And American managers can't understand if we are speaking too fast. Okay, now words should be separate from each other. This is really important. This is really important. You can actually practice this at home. Just speak all these things one by one and make sure that all the words can be heard separately, right? So another thing is modulations. Americans like to listen to the modulations. Your voice should have modulations. Your voice should not be plain. Again, in India, when a person is speaking with modulations, it's considered rude. But here in America, it's considered more suave and more articulate when you are using modulations. Okay, for example, the way I am speaking now, the modulations word can be heard separately from the rest. Can you see that? So we should be speaking like that. You know, it's other thing is Americans speak musically. So you can think of speaking musically. You need to harness this skill. You need to work on this skill. If you want to clear the interviews really well, you want to impress the managers when they are talking to you, you need to speak musically. Musically use modulations. That's the right word, modulations, but I call it musically also. Sometimes it's almost musical, so that's why I call it. So these are the things you need to keep in mind while talking to the hiring managers as part of the telephonic or face-to-face interviews. You see how I'm also becoming a little better, as I'm talking. Use your best American accent. Now, this is really important too. Many of us think that, hey, what, I should be, myself or what, or this or that. Basically, when you talk in American accent, you become more easily understandable, comprehensible to the American client. So you need to speak a little bit in as much of an American accent as you can. Remember, an American is taking the interview and you need to really be able to impress them. So you need to speak in American accent. Okay, I'm following the modulations. My words are separate from each other. Only issue with me is I don't speak fast. I don't speak slowly. I speak fast. Words come out of my mouth. You can see it. I'm speaking loud enough. My problem is not speaking slowly. If you can take care of that also, that'll be awesome. Listen and then speak. See, you would notice when you are giving the answers to the American managers, they would listen. They would not interrupt. Typically, they would not interrupt. Even if they do, let's say you're speaking for like 5 minutes endlessly, they might interrupt and then apologize. So that's separate, totally separate. You would feel that you've gone overboard and that's why they're doing that. In general, they would not interrupt you. Now, on the same note, when American manager is explaining something, don't interrupt. Listen. And then when it comes to when he or she asks you a question, that's when you need to speak. This is common sense, but somehow I've seen some people defeating this or not using it when they are taking the interview calls. So I want to make sure that you utilize the skill well. If you interrupt, then say, oh, I'm sorry, please continue. If you interrupt, or if you let's say for any reason you end up interrupting and you realize, oh, you made a mistake, feel free to say, oh, I'm sorry, please continue. I'm sorry, oh, I'm sorry. In a low voice would be a little better. That's a little bit more apologetic. Last point that I want to talk about as part of communication skills is always greet and ask, how are you, confidently. So this is very important thing. I've seen many people who come from India. They would think that, hey, it's not polite to ask how are you. Someone asks, hey, how are you? Manager asks, how are you? And they say, I'm good, but they don't ask back. Whereas what you should do is you should say, I'm good. Thank you for asking. How are you? How are you, Mark? Okay. Call by first name. Everybody, don't call sir, madam, just say call by first name. This is important too. In American workplace, Nobody calls by sir or madam. So if you start calling by sir or ma'am, people think that, yeah, you know what, you're new to the country. That's not what we want to. That we don't want to give them this impression. We want to tell them that we are well absorbed and we really believe in American style, and then use that style. Now, this kind of completes my communication skills related training. I would come back to any other. I would come back to this if I remember any other point. But for now, we are good. Let me talk about some other situations, other things which are very important as far as as far as interview taking is concerned. Answering questions. So what happens is, in the beginning of of any interview, they will be asking, so give us an overview of what your experience is as related to this position. Or they might ask you, hey, what did you do in the last project? Typically what I do is I have made a pretty big summary of my skills. So let's say, for example, I'm a Java guy. So I should say, I've worked on, a variety. I've been a Java person and I've worked on Java versions, blah blah blah. I don't know Java versions, so I'm telling you what you should say. You should say, I've worked on Java versions 1, 2, 3, and then I've also worked on Java with Swing and Java with Hibernate. I've also worked on, it's an industry level summary. I've worked on finance. I've worked in, healthcare also. And within healthcare, I've created solutions related to this. Within finance, worked on solutions this. Okay, by the way, I am a business analyst, just letting you know. So you should know that when I'm speaking something, I will always talk in terms of, so I, for example, in case of business analysis or in case of business systems analysis, I speak like this. I tell them, hey, you know what? I have worked on I've worked on different kinds of data related projects. I've worked on transactional systems. I've worked on data warehousing systems. I've worked on reporting systems. I've also worked on technologies like OBIEE. I've worked on writing the batch interfaces, the specifications for batch interfaces. I've also written the specifications for data migrations. I've also written the specifications for real-time transactions between a front-end system and a back-end system. I've also written the specifications for the data exchange between a data warehouse system and a reporting system. So how I'm speaking, you can see I made a high-level summary of my skill set. And it should be 2 minute thingy. It should be 1.5 to 2 minute long. It should not be a short summary. I'm talking about something which would really give an idea about your skill set to the hiring manager, and that should be pertaining to the position. See, this is your 2 minutes where the person hasn't asked questions. You have studied the job description, and from there you can prepare what you want to talk about right at the beginning of this position of this interview. And that would be really, I have seen situation, like after giving this 2 minute interview overview, my interviewer said, hey, you know what, you answered all the questions that I want you to talk about. Now let me, so they were, so basically this is such a pretty nice overview that it takes care of pretty much everything. And this is, another thing is, when someone asks you a question, you may not be able to answer it well, you may not be able to understand the question. A lot of things come into picture. But in the beginning, when you give such a great overview, it's pretty much like you take the wicket on the first ball itself. You see, you have 30 minutes. In those 30 minutes, you are the bowler, and it's going to be very difficult for you to handle the batsman. So what you do is, in the first ball itself, if you take a wicket, that helps you. The next 5 wickets will go easily. And I'm sorry, next 5 balls will go easily. It's something similar. Okay, make sure in the very first, for the very first few minutes, you talk about your overview, the well-prepared overview that everybody would be pertaining to the position. Now, I have also seen many a time they would ask some question which is not like give me an overview, or give me a summary of your position, or give me a summary of how you are a good fit for this position. So all these questions clearly mean that you can talk about your overview. Sometimes they would ask a question in which you cannot talk about your overview. I would say just bring the question, like for example, they might say, what did you do in the last project? For example, what I do is I say that, hey, you know what? In the last project, I did a number of things, and I talk about my overview. I worked on this. By the way, in some other projects also, I did some really good work, which would be very relevant to you, and then start talking about everything else that I need to, that I wanted to speak in the overview. Remember, this is your first ball, and you need to make sure you take a wicket. Don't give yes no answers even the question seems to warrant a yes no response. This is a very important thing. Let's say, in India, when you're taking the interview, you're supposed to give summary answer, a short answer. Whereas in America, I would say don't give a short answer, give a long answer. Even if the question, let's say, especially if this is my number 4 point. I'm speaking a lot of time. I want to make sure that you answer. Don't give short answers. Give long answers. Even if the questions ask for yes or no answer, don't give yes or no. Give a long answer. For example, if someone says, "Have you worked in swing?" Yes, and I've worked in swing version this, and I've also handled this aspect of swing. Or for example, someone says, "Hey, have you worked in data migration projects?" Yes, I have worked on data migration projects really well. I've worked on data mapping for those. I've done source to target mapping. I have done entity mappings, attribute mappings, and drop-down values mapping. And if you want to know more about it, feel free to ask. Okay. Um, so second and fourth point are covered. Right now, this yes no answer I have not emphasized enough. I want to make sure you know that you need to make sure that you don't answer yes no. This is also considered very disconfident when you're giving yes no answers. Hey, have you worked in Hibernate? No, but I can handle it because of the fact that in my two of my projects, this is what I studied, and I also took a course about 5 years back in this Hibernate. So in Hibernate. So basically, this is the way you should answer even a no question, but don't answer yes no answer questions like that. Make sure you answer the question the same way as a question was answered, or orient the answer in accordance with the question. Okay, now this happens a lot. Like, let's say I have prepared a question, which I prepared an answer to a question. Give me an overview. Give me an overview of your experience. So let's say, okay, I have done this. I've done this. Let's say they ask, tell me how your experience is relevant to this project. So in that case, you need to speak the same exact meat that you prepared, but just make sure you answer the question too. So you orient the answer towards the question. For example, in this case, you would say, sorry, I forgot the question. The question was, please give me an overview how your skill set is relevant to current position, right? Well, I see my skill set is really relevant to this position. Your position says you need this skills. I have plenty of those. I worked on this. Your position also requires someone who knows data analysis really well. I do have done data analysis of different kinds. I've done 4 kinds of data analysis. I've done data conversions, data migrations, batch job specifications, real-time specifications, so on and so forth. You see how my question is now my answer is now addressing the question rather than simply just question answer which is totally disconnected from the question. So make sure your answer is oriented towards the question, is using the same kind of language as the question. So this is really important. If you don't understand this point, let me say some more. Like, for example, let's say you have memorized an answer. There are 5 types of data. Like, there are transactional data, there is metadata, there is master data, then there is user data, and then there is application data, right? Then let's say you say, and someone asks you a question. The hiring manager asks you a question. Hey, how many different types of data are there that you have handled? So you say, I've handled these 5 types of data. So you don't say there are 5 types of data, this. You say, I have handled this data, I have handled this data. You see how you have to make sure you answer the question and use the same meat. You use the same meat, just basically answer mold it in a way that you're answering the question. So it's the same wine, but just put it in the bottle in the same shape of the bottle as the question. Okay, I hope this is clear to you. If this is not, you can talk to the person who gave you this video, and let's see whether, and then I'll try to make sure that you get your question answered. But I think I'm quite clear. Make sure you speak a lot, even if the answer could be short. speak about all the parameters that could be related to that question. Now, for example, let's say they are so basically make sure you answer a lot more than just the question. You talk a lot. Okay, don't talk less. This is really important. Okay, and even if someone asks a simple question like, hey, how many different types of servlets are there? You mentioned these are the different types of servlets. I work in this, and some of these servlets pose a lot of challenges while configuration, and these are the challenges that I face with these servlets. Blah blah blah. You see how I did not give a short answer. I gave more than they asked. Typically, my approach is think about what their concern is, what the hiring manager's concern is, what the typical concern is around this question, and answer that as well. That's my approach. So let's say they say, "Have you ever done data migration?" Yes, and I've handled different aspects of it. I've worked there as a business analyst. I've also handled the UAT for data migration. I've also handled the testing for data migration. You see, I answered yes, as well as many more things around what the concern of the hiring manager would be. And these things typically either come from your experience, when your experience would tell you typically what the concerns are or what the intricacies of that particular technology are. Sometimes acquisition will tell you. So you need to capitalize on all your knowledge to be able to make sure, to be able to ensure that you answered more than the question. Technical expertise. This is, I already told you about giving an overview in the beginning itself. I also told you, when someone asks you about something that they answered well. Now I'm going to talk about something like, if you haven't worked in certain aspects of the requirement or the position, then how do you handle that? Let's say they say you need to Java Hibernate as well. See, don't say I personally don't like when someone says I have never worked on Hibernate. I don't know how Hibernate works. This kind of answered I don't like. This is me personally. So what if I were to suggest you should never say like this. So never admit to anything saying you have never done it. That's what I really mean. Don't say I've never done it. I won't do it. It seems like you're saying I won't do it. But whereas you really want to say that, hey, you know what, I do understand how Hibernate works. Well, I didn't get a chance to work on it so far, but I do understand how Hibernate works. And I had undergone a training about 5-6 years back when I started my career. So I did, and oftentimes I've seen solutions implemented in Hibernate. I was not the one who did it, someone else did it. So these are the 3 or 4 points that you can utilize to make a point. And last but not the least, I'm very willing to learn and Hibernate, and I'm very confident that I'll be able to do a very good job. Never say I'm not sure if I can do it. Don't say if I can do it. Say I'm quite confident that I should be able to handle that. Okay. Look at the full glass. Emphasize on the full. How there is a half empty glass, then there is a half full glass. Emphasize on the half fullness. I'm sure I can do it. I haven't done it, but I am sure I can do it. That's half full. You're emphasizing on the half full glass. If you say, I can't do it, I don't know whether I can do it, that's looking at the half empty part of the glass. Glass is having only half the water. We all know that. So make sure you answer it well. Always say, I'm ready to learn new things. Emphasize on that. If you do not know, if you have never worked on some aspect, say, I'm ready to learn. I'm quite, and speak why you feel you should be able to understand it really well. See, for example, let's say, they asked me, hey, have you worked on finance transactions? Hey, well, I worked on healthcare transactions, HIPAA transactions 837, 835, 834. And the envelope and loops are similar, same in every transaction. So even if this is a finance transaction 226, I'm sure I can handle it because I do understand how envelopes and loops work. So those are common to every, so in my field, so I'm just giving an example from my field. In my field, these envelopes and loops are common to whether it's a finance transaction or this is a healthcare transaction, and I'm emphasizing on that. So you need to do something similar. You can't say, you know what, I don't know whether I will be able to learn or not. You should say I can learn. I know, and you should also give a why. For example, let's say it's a healthcare project and you have worked on finance. Then you need to say, hey, you know what, agreed, I have got an understanding of finance as well as processes, but then I've re-engineered the processes a number of times, and I do understand how transactions and master data works, and I do understand, how various business systems work, like transactional system or data warehouse systems, I'm pretty confident that I can scale this knowledge to understand how in the finance industry these things work, and I'm very confident that I will be able to do that. So you see how I'm, always emphasizing on the half full glass and ensuring that they understand, that I can do it and I can ready to learn new things. Always emphasize on the ability to Google and find the solutions if you have not worked in a certain technology. So let's say, they say, hey, have you worked in Java with MongoDB? And you haven't worked on MongoDB. You should say, hey, you know what, I've worked. I'm quite confident that I can, I would never be bothering anyone because I have the ability to learn myself by using Google or tutorials on the web, or just emphasize on any other way of learning. Like let's say I'm not sure what are various ways that person has blogs. So so you mentioned, I have the ability to Google and get to the blogs, and and join some blogs, and I do have a very good understanding of how tutorials, looking at the tutorials on the web, and I will be able to, I'm quite confident that I will be able to learn this and be able to provide the solution. So don't see, again and again I'm saying that, emphasize on what you can handle. I've seen many people, from India especially, they try to emphasize, they think it's dishonest to say I can handle this thing, or this, and they also feel that it's dishonest to try to show that you can handle this, or try to show that you have done it. Hey, we are not trying to show, we are not doing that. We are simply saying that even if we haven't done it, we are emphasizing on we can do this. So this is a really important thing. We need to make sure that if we can handle something, we should say it gracefully that we can handle. If this is a very important point, because this fifth point is in direct contradiction to 1, 2, 3, 4. It says that if the position is of developer, then don't say you can work as tester. Okay, then don't say you have worked as tester or BA. Also, if it is a BA position, then don't say you have worked as PM or tester, or as developer. This is really important. This is really important that you don't make this mistake. So although my first two, three, 4 points say that if you haven't worked on something, then you mentioned, but that's related to technologies, that's related to skills, that's related to technology, industries, and types of business systems, or types of functionality, and that's that's around that. But as far as the role is concerned, don't say, if you've worked if the position is of dev, don't say I can work as a BA or as a tester, because in a project, typically in America, they would not give the testing work to a developer. They would not give the developers work to a BA, business analyst. They would not give a business analyst work to a developer. So when you say that, it seems like you don't have the knowledge of anything. And many people, when they're working as a BA, they try to show that when they're working as developer, they try to show they have ability to handle business analysis work also. But don't, so that's why they end up saying that, hey, you know what, I can handle BA work also. But don't say that. If your resume says, if your experiences of developer, emphasize on that. Whatever is on the resume, basically you need to make sure, and whatever is on the required. So they have picked the resume thinking that it is a developer and the position is also a developer. So you need to make sure that you pose as you completely portray yourself as developer. Never ever mention your testing skills or BA, business analysis skills. Similarly, the requirement was of BA and you gave your resumes of business analyst. You need to make sure you emphasize on your business analysis skills, not on your testing skills or development skills. Similarly, don't say you worked as a PM. In some rare circumstances, position description would say that, right, that they need someone who has worked as a business analyst and who can also do some testing. So, or a person who has worked as a PM but can also handle business analysis. In those cases, you can mention that, yes, I have some experience as business analysis also. So that's secondary role. But typically these are rare positions, and you need to make sure that you don't brag. You don't go out of hand and and break this rule, because they will not select you. Always make sure you ask at the end some questions related to the project. For example, what's the version, or what challenges you guys are facing, or what's the roadmap for this whole program, things like that. You need to make your questions. These are the can questions, and you need to be able to, you need to ask these questions. So you can make a question that you really like, and that, for example, what's the roadmap of the program, and you can ask every interviewer, every hiring manager, every single time about this question. What's the version of the let's say you're talking about Java, so what's the version you guys are using? Let's say, like, for example, in business analysis, version doesn't make any sense, so don't ask this question. So for example, you can ask in that case what challenges you guys are facing, related to this project or related to this role, something. And so this way, you need to make sure you ask some question. Don't say no, I don't have any questions. Okay. Always thank everybody towards the end. Thank everybody towards the end of the interview. Okay. Make sure you prepare simple questions like what's the SWOT, what's SWOT analysis, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Google it, and then make sure you have the ready-made answers to these kind of simple questions. This is also very important. I've seen people getting deselected because they answered all the technical questions, they answered everything well, but then towards the end they got swamped by these stupid questions and they didn't know the answer to those. I want to make sure you know the answer to those. Okay. All right. And then, for example, there's some questions about how do you handle team pressure? How do you handle pressure? How do you handle conflicts? How do you handle how do you juggle your work? How do you organize your work? These are some of the questions you need to make sure you answer really well. Okay. Now, questions related to joining, relocation preferences, or expenses. See, many people, take this as an opportunity to tell the hiring manager about all the issues that they might face. Actually, this is not the place to tell any of these things. Remember, when you are in this, you like when you work for a consultancy or you work for a tier one, and if you're working for the end client, tell them all. If you are applying for a permanent position with the end client, tell them everything you want to. But when you're working through a consultancy, end client had one position for which they were hiring, and they specifically said for this location, for this skill, and they want someone who's immediately available. Now, if you give them your stories, they would simply reject you. They will, let's say the position is in Delaware and you want a position in California. There is no way they can create a position in California for you, right? It is simple maths. They have a position in Delaware. You take it or leave it. So when you start to give them your preferences about the location, or then you are basically pretty much saying, hey, I don't want the job. And that should never be the issue. That should never be the way to handle the things, because in the beginning of the whole interview process, that's the reason interview came, because you must have said at some point of time that you're ready to relocate. So basically, never ever answer these relocation question by saying that, what, no, I would be happy to work in California, or I would be happy to work in wherever you're happy to work at, but yeah, I'm okay to work there, where the project is. Let's say the project is in Denver. You say, hey, what, I'm okay to work in. Don't say I'm okay. Show enthusiasm. I'm very excited to work in Denver because my sister lives there, because my uncle lives there, because I my future wife lives there, my girlfriend lives there, so I'm gonna be marrying her. I'm very happy about it. Don't say all this bullshit. I don't give any shit. Saying that, hey, what, I don't know, whether I want to go there, but okay, I will go. Is it because they don't have any position close to your home? So don't also think that you would sound vain if you say, what, I'm very excited to go to Denver. And they'll be like, you might think that they would be like, why do you want to come to Denver? You are in California. Hey, you know what? My aunt lives there, so I love coming to Denver. And I visited her Denver. No, don't say I visited Denver, because that will be creating problems. You have to then explain, what you like in Denver, where did you visit, and things like that. Just say my aunt lives there. Regarding joining, typically, what I mean is that there's thing with how soon can you join? Your question should be, I can join very soon. You should not be saying, I can join only after 2 months. When you're applying for a permanent position, these things make a lot of sense, joining after a long time or something. But in case of contracting positions, these are immediate positions typically. They need someone immediately. You need to say, I can join immediately. If you can't say you can join immediately, then there will be a problem. They may not like you. So please make sure you should always say, hey, you know what, I'm very excited about joining you guys immediately. Expenses. Typically, projects are not expense paid these days. Gone are the days in year 2000 till 2005. You used to see a lot of expense paid projects, but nowadays expense paid projects are very few and very less. Don't mention here, you know what, if you pay expenses, I can do this. Even if they offer, if it is not in the description, don't take the offer. Say, you know what, I'm ready to work at my own expense. The reason is, they might be just checking whether you are very happy to work or not. Then there are some questions related to whether you will work at the client side, whether you will be relocating to the client side, or whether you will work remotely, or you will be commuting back and forth. You need to say that you will not be commuting back and forth. You will be relocating there, because that's what you should be planning to do anyway, right? So there is no such thing as commuting to work from, let's say you are in Tennessee and you say I would be commuting to work in New Jersey every week. Nobody's going to like that, and plus you won't be able to do that. So the reason you can't do that is same as the reason is similar, same as the reason why they wouldn't like it, because they know that's not doable. So, and that's the reason is same. So please never ever say that I would work remotely, or I would work, or I would work, or I would commute every week. So you need to always make sure you say and talk with enthusiasm. Very excited to come to, let's say it's Denver or Minneapolis, the coldest place on earth. Hey, I'm very excited to come to Minneapolis. I have some family. I have some family there, so I'm very happy to be there. I'm gonna be happy to be there, and I don't need any expenses, and I'll be joining immediately, and I can join within a week or within 2-3 days. So look at the requisition. If it is asking for less than if they're asking to join you immediately, like within a week, then emphasize on that. Typically, everybody would be okay with you joining after a week. So just say I'll be able to join within a week. If you give me if you give me a confirmation saying that I'm confirmed, I would definitely join immediately. So this is how you should handle these joining and relocation related questions. Now coming to personality related questions. Here there are a lot of personality related questions. You just Google personality related interview questions and answers. You will see I found these 2-3 links. businessinsider.com/questions hiring managers personality 2014 6, and the muse.com advice /30 behavioral interview questions you should be ready to answer. So what I'm trying to say is you can just Google this and you will get these 2-3 links. There are 30 behavioral questions and answers. Read those, make sure you answer those questions perfectly. Those questions look like, please tell about your strengths and weaknesses, or do your SWOT analysis. How do you handle pressure? How do you handle priorities? How do you prioritize your work? Are you a team player or individual contributors? What drives you in your professional life? Can you take me through a scenario at work that was particularly stressful to you, and how did you handle it? What has the most satisfying moment in your life been? If you could change one thing about the way you approach challenges, what would it be? And so on and so forth. Make sure you prepare answers to these questions before you start the interview. They would ask 1 or 2 such questions. Typically, hiring managers do ask. Hiring managers at the end client side do ask these questions from you. So make sure you answer these questions. Make sure you have well prepared answers to these questions, okay? Because if they ask you for your weakness, it can be a problem. Typically, I can tell you about everything else. I would say you should study and just have the best answers possible. For weakness, we typically say I'm impatient to get results, or you say I am I work I'm a workaholic and I want to work on the weekends and people don't allow me. So these are the kind of weaknesses you speak. So I have given an overview, not the complete answers of weakness as well. You need to make sure you do research on weakness that you can portray. Don't say, I'm not organized and that is the problem. Okay, because that is a real problem. Try to talk about some problem which is not a real problem. Okay, like for example, I'm a workaholic, and many people don't like it because I would be working at 12 in the night, and in the morning, I will ask questions from people, and they will be like, "Hey, where did you get these questions?" And I'm like, I was working after. Hey, we talked at 5 o'clock in the evening, and then and you already have more questions at 9 o'clock. So then you say, yeah. So that poses an issue. People expect me to come back after some time, but I want to make the things move fast. So that doesn't really work well. That's one of the weaknesses I have when I'm working in the clients at the client side. So how do you plan to take care of this weakness? By taking care of things like I make sure that I give everybody enough time, even if though I'm working fast, everybody else may not be working fast enough. So I want to make sure I give everybody some time. That's how you handle this weakness. So I gave you one example, but please find your own answers to these questions. That's very important, and handle these questions with a prepared answer. Don't try to look for the answer at that time, at the time of the interview. Okay, this is really important.